fire, fire, fire. You will never own anything, but you'll pay forever. Yippee! Finance everything. Ah!
You will never own anything.
Oh my God, my
the
cat
death
just
of
jumped
ownership
back up.
is here, and the subscription model industry has quadrupled since 2014.
Ooh,
Buy now,
Adobe.
pay later is booming, and debt is on the rise. And
That's what's wild to me. I remember trying to order some HoloLive merch, and PayPal offered to make me pay for it later or pay it in parts. And I'm like, wait, since when is this a thing where you get the option to pay in parts? Like, why? Amazon is the same thing. I never got that. That is a scam. Base chatter. Base chatter.
Gen Z are the guinea pigs in this new experiment. Today, Generation Z is in record levels of debt,
Oh
while
my
earning far
God.
less than the generations before them. So let's take a look at the day-to-day life of someone growing up in the anti-ownership economy. However young or old you are, the first thing most people do when they wake up is look at their phones. Over 80% of people will do this in the first 15 minutes of the day. For
80%? That's wild. Kitty, you are no way, kitty cat. There we go. He's a big boy. What was I saying? Oh yeah, for 80%? What's the statistic on that, man? Chat, we're cooked, man.
some people, it's just an alarm clock, but most are plugging into the digital world as soon as possible. The smart
I only just turn it off for the alarm clock and then I don't look at it and I kind of just lay there like, oh god, I have to get up now.
smartphone has become the starting point for nearly everyone's day, and it was also what first enabled the subscription model to really take off. Before their meteoric rise in both functionality and price, phones generally weren't something you bought through a rolling contract. Some people paid a monthly bill for access to the cellular network, but most of the time that wasn't for the physical device itself.
Oh, and breaking contracts with those companies? Oh my gosh. Yeah, God forbid, man. If you want to break a contract with your payment for the phone, and you have to pay for them.
Instead, before smartphones came around, the devices were cheap and more disposable. People would pay upfront for phones as well as all other tech products. This even extended to software, music, and other products that are really just packets of data. People expected to pay once for something, then own it forever. That was how
Again, my first phone I bought was like a Samsung 4? Yeah, an S4 or an S5, I can't remember. And I remember I didn't have to pay like a bill on it. It was just a thing that I had to pay for the bill itself. Like if I have a year-long contract, I can't break it without getting my legs broken. Now it's like you have to pay in parts for the phone. It's like, what the heck?
the rest of the world worked. When smartphones and high-speed internet came along, they
the
changed the entire
iPhone.
game. Phones became high-tech gateways into the wider world of services. They also got a lot more sophisticated and expensive, pushing them out of the reach for most consumers. Of
Yeah.
course, some of this was due to higher production costs, but a much larger part of the price hike was because tech companies realized they could justify these much higher prices. If that wasn't enough, it gave mobile phone companies a
Consume the
huge
slab.
opportunity to change their entire business model. Instead of just selling the phones as individual devices, they could push forward the idea of paying for both the device and the networking in one single contract.
I remember when buying an app on the iPhone or the iPod was like a luxury. Like you already have the phone, right? And it's like, oh my gosh, you're trying to make me like pay for an app that's $2? I've said this before, but I asked my mom to buy like, I think it was Angry Birds or like Fruit Ninja, and she said, absolutely not, I'm not giving you my card. And then I went to my dad and he's like, absolutely not, your mom said no. I jailbroke my iPod Touch. I wanted to do that, but I was too scared because I really wanted to still be able to like message my friends. Because if you jailbreak it, it usually breaks the whole thing. But you can play games on it, which is nice. But I wanted to. I thought about it.
It was just one small step for consumers,
Yeah.
and for many of them, it was a better option. Instead of paying hundreds up front, they could pay it off over a few years, keeping it generally affordable. And this didn't seem like much of a big change either, because the data, text, and calls were already often a monthly payment. But why were these companies so intent on pushing this kind of business
Money.
model? Well, the author Terry Pratchett came up with a classic example that shows why being poor generally means that you end up paying far more for the exact same things. Imagine that a really good pair of boots, the kind that'll last you a decade, cost $100. A man on minimum wage likely couldn't afford all of that at once. He can't spend the time saving up for them either, as he needs the shoes now so that he can work in the first place. So he goes for the cheaper option, a $10 pair of boots that don't really keep his feet dry and only last around 6 months to a year at best.
Yeah,
Over
it keeps
time,
you
this man will
buying.
spend more money on his boots than the rich man who just bought the nice ones in the first place would. Meanwhile, despite paying more, he'll still have wet feet. And a subscription model is like an even worse version of
I still don't understand that. Subscribe and save dollars. You see that all the time on Amazon. Subscribe and save. Subscribe and save. Huh?
this. Imagine that for just
You're not
$3.99 a month, the man could subscribe to Boots Plus. They provide a service which gives you access to a pair of their cheap boots as well as monthly repairs, maintenance and replacements as well. While the initial cost is even less for this service, over time it'll mean paying about $48 a year for boots. Over a decade,
And then they give you have to give them all of your like credit card information, your address, your email, and then you're on their list and you get spammed endlessly about it. Yeah.
this will cost nearly 5 times more than the
Sell your
expensive
data.
boots ever did up front. So it's pretty obvious now why companies are all trying to switch their customers onto the subscription model. It simply makes them far more money, and there's a whole host of other hidden tricks and benefits for them that we'll get into later. But before we continue, I want to tell you about our video sponsor NordVPN. You see, the internet is an incredible tool, but it does come with some risks that we often speak about on the channel. Cyber
it's a
threats, data
VPN?
breaches, and privacy invasions are more common than ever. Whether you're working remotely,
Ugh, I'm
traveling,
gonna
or
steal
simply
your
browsing
data,
at home,
chat.
your personal data
Give me
is
your
constantly at risk.
data.
And that's where NordVPN comes
Data.
in. NordVPN provides an encrypted, secure connection that keeps your online activity private and protected from hackers, malicious websites, and intrusive trackers. With just
What?
one click, you can
Intrusive?
shield your sensitive information from cyber criminals, especially when using public Wi-Fi networks, which are often unsecured and vulnerable to attacks. But beyond privacy, NordVPN's Threat Protection Pro goes a step further by blocking malware, phishing attempts, and intrusive ads. Unlike traditional VPNs that only offer basic
What?
DNS filtering, NordVPN actively scans downloads for malware and warns you about fraudulent websites before you click. It even detects fake online stores, preventing you from falling victim to scams designed to steal your payment information. Another critical feature is the Dark Web Monitor, which continuously
Web.
scans hacker forums and data leaks
They
to
got
alert you if
dogs
your
on
credentials
there?
have been exposed, giving you the chance to secure your accounts before cyber criminals take advantage. NordVPN isn't just about security, it's about freedom. And with servers in over 60 countries, you can bypass geo restrictions and access your favorite content no matter where you are. So get NordVPN's
What?
exclusive deal today and enjoy
Smuggling
4
is
extra
gonna get
months at
banned in Belgium soon.
nordvpn.com/moonvpn. It's completely risk-free with a 30-day money-back guarantee. So protect yourself online and get NordVPN today. But for now, let's get back to Generation Z, who are nearly all hooked into these subscription models. They dominate nearly everything they do, including when
And what's fucked up is that the worst part about this is that they don't know any better. A lot of the Gen Zers that I've ever talked to, at least the younger ones, they don't understand that this didn't used to be a thing. You used to be able to buy out the product and then use it forever, like Windows 95, you just buy it and that's it. Windows XP, you just buy it and that's it. You can use it on different computers as well. Yeah, it was normal. Now it's not normal to do that. You can't just buy it out. That's not enough for us.
they first wake up. But it isn't just their phones. If it's a weekday, most people in Generation Z will either be heading to school, college, or work, and most of them will be listening to music as they go. In this modern world, most people try to distract themselves from their surroundings in whatever way they can, all while keeping the dopamine pipeline flowing for the brain.
Yes,
Music is yet another
dopamine.
massive industry that has fully embraced the subscription model. At first, it just wasn't feasible. The rise of Napster and other file-sharing services made getting free music incredibly easy to access as long as you knew how to
Who here downloaded a virus on LimeWire? Who downloaded a virus? I didn't download it off of LimeWire, but I did torrent a virus because I wanted to play Sims 3. I bricked the family computer and I blamed it on my school, and my parents had to take it in and like wipe the computer out. Yeah. I just straight up bricked it. I remember it so distinctly too. My stomach was in knots. I turned on the computer and I played The Sims 3 for about 5 minutes or something, and then it started locking up. And then I restarted the computer and it was even worse than before. And I was like, oh shit, what does this mean? So I Googled it on my dad's laptop and it's like, what does it mean when your computer starts slowing down really badly? And it was like, it's a Trojan. And I'm like, fuck! What did I do? How do I get it off? And it's like, it's bricked. That's fucked. You can't do anything. You have to do a complete reset. Yeah, I used Napster to download music. I did not. I think that was a bit older. I think my brother probably did. I did not do that.
Use a computer. The problem was there really wasn't any way to monetize this because it was nearly impossible to provide a better service than these shady websites did. The record labels just wouldn't let anyone do it legally. That was until Spotify came along and forced it all to change. They co-opted the file sharing business model for free, unlimited access, and they even illegally downloaded music to fill the first versions of the app.
I'm telling you, all of these big corpos started out being little scumbags just like everyone else. They used to be cool, and then they turned corpo.
The only difference was that they played ball with the record labels and worked out a deal with them. By passing nearly all the costs onto the artist and the consumers, they convinced them to give up some of their control over the rights to the music. To this deal, all they needed was a simple subscription model to keep the money flowing in. It let the record companies redefine the deal with the artists, paying them fractions of pennies per stream rather than a cut of all their album sales.
Wow.
Consumers got a rough deal as well. You see, most people don't actually listen to tons of new music all the time. They just listen to their favorite songs over and over.
True.
And as a result, Spotify's algorithms are designed around this, rarely promoting music people haven't heard already. Most people end up getting the same thing they would have gotten with a modest collection of records or digital albums, but they'll be paying for it for the rest of their lives instead of just at once.
Wait, that's actually a really good point. Even with Apple Music, you download and like buy the music, right? And then you could just have it forever. Now you're just infinitely paying for it. And I'm like, what if Spotify dies? Then you're kind of fucked, huh? Yeah.
Even subscription services that let you make concrete purchases don't actually grant you ownership of anything. Sony clearly demonstrated this in 2023.
Apple Music, you still don't own it, it's a license. Yeah, but you can rip the file and you don't actually own it. I understand what you're saying, but like that's what I used to do. My friend in middle school, she was quite well off. Her parents were well off, and I would go to her house and rip the music off of Apple Music. And just like rip it just straight up. I'd just be like, fuck that. I'm not doing that shit. Yeah, I'm pirating that. I'm not paying that. She's like, okay, just whatever you want. I can buy it for you. And I'm like, thanks. And we'd have fun. But like, again, it was back then. I don't know about now.
When they removed tons of Discovery shows from people's digital libraries, even though they'd already bought them. In fact, we've actually lost so much with the subscription revolution, including the basic idea of ownership itself. Meanwhile, companies can abuse the many tricks that are now possible with this business model, as it's just so much easier to lure people into subscription models. Giving out free CDs or free samples of any product isn't guaranteed to make people come back, but free, easy to join trials, on the other hand, are far easier and much cheaper. Even if
I hate free trials. They always make you... You know what they bank on is that you forget about your card or that you were using this subscription. I usually try and cancel it, and some of these companies are so predatory that if you try and cancel it early so that you don't forget to cancel it, they sometimes will cancel the service entirely if you try and do that. I will go out of my way, if I really, really have to, I will write it down on a piece of paper and glue it to my monitor so I don't forget. That's how much I hate those.
Loads of people go in with the intention of cancelling it later, lots of them will forget. Most people just don't even realize how many subscriptions they really have. Some companies like Amazon set up traps by making a subscription the default option for some of their products. Meanwhile, they call it subscription.
I hate that too. Like, you have to make sure that you click the one-time purchase when it's at the top, but this is what's defaulted. I hate that. It's so weird. I always double check. I've never made this mistake so far, but you just always want to get the one-time purchase. It's like, yes, I really need a one-time purchase for fucking socks. I need a subscription for socks, not a one-time.
Subscribe and save, implying they're doing all of this to save you money. And it's a problem that's growing surprisingly fast. Unused subscriptions went from costing the UK £306 million in 2022 to $688 million just 1 year later. That's
doubled. That's more than doubled. That's so bad. They're actually just scamming them.
And it's probably the same all across the Western world. The focus changes from the consumer making the active choice to buy something again to the consumer choosing not to continue paying. Even upselling is easier with subscription services, as lots of companies artificially restrict features, gatekeep.
BMW heated seats subscription is real and it costs $18 a month. Bro, my dad had a car when I was a little kid. We finally got heated seats and we were so happy because it was really cold and we'd drive around and we'd have heated seats. And my dad would blow a gasket if he had heated seats that he had to pay for. Didn't someone make a meme and say, oh, what's next? Brakes? Yeah, brakes installed for $18 a month? Or seat belts? Yeah, that's a good one. Engine, your battery, your headlights.
Them for a more expensive premium plan. And if that's not enough, they can use a trick that Amazon, Netflix, and many other big companies have recently introduced. Instead of just raising the price, you can introduce a new subscription level with adverts. You can use this to replace the old basic subscription, which becomes the new premium subscription. The old premium subscription with whatever add-ons you can invent becomes a premium plus, and now you can charge even more for that one as well. And if all the major companies agree to this, then there's really nothing the consumer can do.
And shitification is so real too. Oh my god. Did we forget that Twitch Prime used to give you, what is it called? Like, no ads on every single stream? Like, it was just like a no ads period, and then they dialed it back, and then they cucked the what is it called? The streamers. Now you get paid less for the Turbo. Or not Twitch Turbo, Twitch Prime. Yeah, and then they turned Twitch Prime into Twitch Turbo, or sorry, the other way around. They turned Twitch Turbo from Twitch Prime. It's like, what the heck?
These companies have learned that despite the backlash, they often end up making so much more money from the people who stick around compared to the customers they lose. All this, and now so many companies are doing this, the actual service and offer has gotten so much worse.
And I also think part of the problem is that the average consumer does not realize that it's happening. Like, I check my internet bill, right? And this one time it increased by $20, and I got so pissed I called the head office, and they said, oh yeah, I mean, we were meant to like roll out like a, you know, it's because of like service fees and stuff. And I'm like, okay, I want to cancel it. And then I thought to myself, like, I can't cancel my internet bill because I can't go anywhere else. That's the biggest problem. You don't have another option.
There was a short period in time where a Netflix subscription would give you tons of different films and shows to watch, but now all the content is split up across a dozen different apps, which all cost far more individually than the old Netflix used to. And you still get adverts on top, and it's almost worse than cable used to be, all without ever actually owning anything. So Generation Z are already on the back foot. Unlike previous generations, they don't own things like their music, and even without inflation, they're going to be paying far more than previous generations did for the exact same things. But unfortunately, subscription models aren't the only thing that's changing. Lots of the older members of Generation Z, after going through their morning routines, will end up at work. But lots of Generation Z is already checking out of the system because no matter how much they work, it isn't going to make their lives any better. Costs of living are incredibly high across the developed world, and this affects young people much more than older and richer generations. For lots of people, this means that they're barely staying afloat and they're definitely not building up any savings. A Bank of America's survey of their adult Gen Z customers showed that over half didn't even have savings to cover just 3 months of expenses.
Oh, and that's increasing, by the way. When was this statistic done? I bet you over COVID this increased. Or even in the last like 3 years since they did the test.
46% have also had to rely on their parents or family financially just to get by. They're living paycheck to paycheck. 1 or 2 bad days could financially cripple them. They're the ones who are comparatively well off. Lots of Generation Z don't have access to those kinds of privileges. Instead, they're sinking further into debt to keep up. Since 2022, credit card balances for Generation Z have increased by more than 50%. The average balance for someone aged 22 to 24 in 2023 was nearly $3,000, 26% more than it was for millennials.
And the worst part is if you're in debt and then something bad happens, you just get into more debt, and then you can't, like, if you break your leg, you have to go and fix it, right? Or you go to work with a broken leg, and then you can't work because they tell you not to work. It just keeps going and going and going, man.
That were the same age just 10 years ago.
So
And at the same
sad.
time, delinquency rates have also risen as well. These aren't signs that Generation Z are naturally careless or looser with their money compared to
Oh my
millennials.
God.
More so it's the conditions that have changed that's simply squeezing them harder. It all means that a larger part of Generation Z are working just to pay off their debts and survive. There isn't any room for building a life, and that's for the people lucky enough to have a job in the first place. Every young person knows just how hard it is to get a job in the modern world, especially when you're fresh out of school or uni.
Why even try? Just be a neat. Live off the government. Some jobs you would rather stay at home and like just eat rice and beans than deal with corpos. Yeah. Why bother?
Even the lowest paying
Play
jobs
video
are becoming
games.
even more hard to get nowadays. In fact, we made an entire video on just this topic alone,
Yeah, we
as it's not
watched that. It was a
uncommon
good
for
one.
companies to force people into multiple interviews, team building exercises, and other pointless tasks. The kinds of
Yes!
jobs that let you climb society's ladder are even worse. They're locked behind layers upon layers of time-destroying bureaucracy. First, there's the
And nepotism. That's my favorite. When you get picked over someone else just because they know someone in the company, like their friends or cousins with them.
standard AI systems that filter out most of the applications based on just random keywords and invisible tests. And once you get past those, you'll get your CV and application read by an overworked, stressed HR intern who's often far less qualified in your field than you are. Then
Or it's AI. They started doing that too. Yeah. AI is gonna be great for this.
there are the tests, interviews,
they don't
group
make
exercises,
mistakes or
callbacks, and more. Sites like LinkedIn have monetized this process and make more money the harder the whole process is. Whole industries have sprung up to take advantage of the desperate people just looking for stable work. Eventually, if you're one of the lucky few that
hate
does get a
Indeed.
job offer, then all it does is elevate you to the first group who are paying off their debts, but they still probably won't own anything either. The Commute Home is yet another example of this. It's another subscription service again, this time though it's mandatory for all but the richest.
What?
Either you travel on public transport,
Wait, what does this say? Rising costs of working commuters work 54 days to cover the cost of their commute. Oh my god, this reminds me of a story. I had a friend that worked in the city like a long time ago, and she worked at a shop and she couldn't afford to, like, she thought about taking the bus, but then the bus wouldn't be able to make it from her house because she didn't live in the city. But then the problem becomes you have to park in the city, and parking costs so much that a third of her wage every month costed the parking. So like it just went down the toilet. So she's just like working for no reason, essentially. Yes, like in the dead center of the city, if you don't have like a place to live, it's like, oh great. That's why you own a bike, right? No, you can't really bike for 3 hours into the city if you live really far away, man. That's not how it works. Make sure she can't save anything for herself. Yeah, just go frick yourself.
mandatory for all but the
Yep.
richest. Either you travel on public transport, which in some cities can cost as much as your rent, or you use a car, something that most Gen Zers can only buy with credit. Today, even a used car is out of reach for most of Generation Z. The
Gross,
cheaper ones will
man.
break down and cost thousands to repair anyway. The most expensive ones are just as expensive as new cars. They've actually started integrating further subscription plans into the cars themselves. Until recently, BMW were planning to lock their heated seats behind a monthly paywall, even though the feature was already built into the car, showing the absurdly dystopian levels of how far the practice of blocking off things that used to come for
You know what they should do is double down and make it retroactive. Just shut off the heating in older cars. Like just
free has really become. Instead, they reversed that decision, but not for any moral reasons. Instead, they'll just stick to charging for software features that they could have included anyway, like parking assistance. Companies are always trying to erode the will of consumers to resist these creeping changes. They only roll them back when they get such a massive backlash that it will actually impact their sales. Once they're home, Gen Z are then confronted by yet another thing they won't own,
Oh my
which
God,
should be
boomer
obvious at this
moment.
point. If you don't have any hope of owning your own music or a car, then a house or a flat is definitely out of reach. The average price of a home in the UK has nearly reached £300,000. And
Yippee! They're just as fuck as we are in America!
Similarly, in the US, it's around $419,000. In the big cities, it's so much worse. To just rent in Manhattan, it costs almost $5,000 on average, just for a tiny little box with barely any bedrooms. But just on average, Generation Z first-time buyers will pay over £100,000 of mortgage repayments in the first 5 years. Yet not that long ago, people only paid about £74,000 in today's money for exactly the same thing. And that's only if they can actually convince a bank to let them buy a home in the first place.
Yeah,
but most people
lenders, Lamau. We love lenders.
Aren't buying homes in the middle of nowhere. If you're trying to make money and get a good job, you end up in a city where
you throw up, you live like that. No, you misunderstand. I didn't pay $5,000 for a little tiny little for a tiny little place.
you just can never save any money. And these high rents mean that most people in Generation Z will never have enough savings for a deposit. And banks today want you to easily be able to re-afford the repayments, as it's a much stricter system than the checks for renting, which creates an excruciating contradiction. Gen Z are left paying tons more in rent than their house would cost to mortgage, while still not being able to actually buy the home they're living in, as your position and security in society is purely based on who your parents were. And as these assets soar in value, it means it will always be completely out of reach for most people in society, and only in reach for people who inherited it.
Generational wealth, classic.
I think a lot of people know there's fundamental inequity, intergenerational inequity, which is because salaries are taxed very highly and wealth, particularly capital gains from your main property, are barely taxed at all. And that leads to, I think, a kind of absurdity, which is that one piece written about this is it's not actually intergenerational inequality that's the problem. It's going to be intragenerational inequality when people start inheriting houses or not inheriting houses. Because you can literally have the situation where you can work incredibly hard for 30 years and reach a position of some eminence in a business or in an institution. And because your parents happen to live in an area of low house prices or didn't own a house at all, you're still living somewhere crap. Whereas your underlings, you know, whose parents lived in Surbiton or Kensington or whatever it may be, okay, are basically swanning around in palaces, going on cruises all the time.
Meaning you just get rich if you're already rich.
The Brits get fucked just as much as the Americans, man. That's so bad.
And the glass ceiling is unbreakable.
Like that.
And now as we're reaching the end of the day, most people from Generation Z will be relaxing with TV shows, film or music. It will most likely come from yet another streaming service and a subscription plan. But for lots of Generation Z, it goes even further than that. Many of them won't even own the TV they're watching things on or the speakers they're using to listen to music.
I never understood that. I don't know, my parents from a young age instilled in me that, like, debt is bad, and the only thing that's reasonable for debt is, like, buying a house, or, what is it called? No, it was only college or a house. They never justified anything. If anything, oh yeah, a car. I suppose a car is, like, fine, I guess.
It's all part of yet another evolution in the anti-ownership economy, buy now, pay later schemes. At first, nobody expected this to ever take off, even the supposed experts in the field. It all began in 2008 when 3 students from the Stockholm School of Economics competed in a university entrepreneurship competition. They pitched their idea for an e-commerce business revolving around this new type of selling products, but it was just laughed out of the room. Reportedly,
and those dudes became filthy rich, let me guess.
The panel of judges told them the idea would never make any money and that they should just give up. Despite losing the competition, their confidence remained unshaken, and they would found the company anyway. And after months of work, they finally found investors to join the company. 3 years later, their new company, Klarna, had already expanded from Sweden into the rest of Europe. And today, they're aiming for an IPO valuing the company at around $15 billion.
So this all came from Europe? It wasn't even Americans that decided to do this fucking capitalism thing? That's insane. 15 billion clams.
Now this might be a happy, great story for the founders, but it wasn't for the rest of the world. The rise of Klarna represents the rise of a new type of consumption, taking out debt for trivial purchases. These so-called buy now, pay later schemes are the apex of this entire problem. Debt and a lack of ownership fueling consumerism and exploitation. Their 0% interest promises sound enticing at first, but once—
Isn't, like, debt bad in, like, the Bible or something? I remember some boomers talking about that a long time ago when I was a kid. Like, debt is bad. Yes. I can see why they could come to that conclusion. Yeah, I think debt is bad. Yeah. Jesus died for our credit card debt. I don't think that's why, but yeah, I guess so.
Once you miss a payment, the late fees add up and eventually they can push people into bankruptcy. And tragically, this isn't the only reason people use these loans. The more desperate often rely on them for groceries and everyday
I
essentials.
think it's interest that the Bible's against. Yeah, but how do you get... But then these companies wouldn't do this if they didn't get money out of it, is what I'm... Yeah, like, the interest thing is like, it's not nice, but then people wouldn't do it if they didn't get anything out of it. Like, why would they give money to get back money? Yeah.
I get
what
it
you're
means that
saying.
lots
I
of
think you're
Generation
right.
Z don't even own the food in their own fridge.
What? What? Wait, what? That was like the first thing I did. Even when I was broke, I'd always have food in the fridge. You don't own the food in your fridge? They buy it on credit? Oh my god, what? Financing groceries is down bad, man. Simpsons prediction, buying your peas on credit. They're onto something, man. We will confiscate your poop. You get into debt and then they have to like pull the food vomit out of your mouth through your fucking throat. Oh my god. 3 more payments for the tomato. This tomato costed $3, but with the interest, it actually costed more like $3.89. Yippee!
All the things we've discussed today are part of a global movement that's eroding the very idea of ownership itself. While Generation Z is bearing the brunt of it, it's still something that affects all of us.
I'm
In many
sorry.
ways, it's a necessary consequence of inequality. The fact that
I'm still flabbergasted people take out loans to buy groceries. It's so down bad. I have said the story of like a family that I used to talk to sometimes where they would take out multiple credit cards and then pay off that credit card's debt with that credit card so that they could keep going. But like I think they bought food with like their own money for at least for the most part. Yeah, like being in debt and buying groceries, financing groceries.
smaller and smaller proportion of
That's
people
wild.
own nearly all of the wealth creates the need for these exact conditions. In another way though, it's the evolution of the consumer culture itself. Actual ownership is unnecessary when it's the experience of consumption that
consume.
people crave. Modern services are completely focused on this. They make the user experience as smooth as possible when you're paying. Everything is there on demand, it's all accessible. Meanwhile, free users are constantly badgered, harassed, and interrupted to try and push them towards
Yeah!
paying. They're trying to turn you
Pay!
into an addict, someone who's so enthralled in the experience of consumption that they're unaware of how badly they're getting ripped off. The only real barrier to not paying for digital content, for example, is that it's annoying and time consuming. Most people don't care one bit about the ethics of it or the
Yeah.
legality because the laws are generally so rarely enforced. It's only the convenience that holds people back and pushes them towards the legal paid alternatives. And this shows us just how strong this desire for instant content has become in the average consumer. To beat this, you have to rise above it. And while you can't change the wider economic realities or the appetite of the average consumer, you can change your own priorities. Because if enough people actually value true ownership, there will always be an economic niche in serving them. Every generation faces new challenges, and for Generation Z, one of theirs is to resist this tempting but exploitative world they've grown up in.
I don't know, man. I think it'll take a lot for people to change. It's not gonna be easy. People already don't care as long as they can keep consuming.
Fire, 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 fire.